So 5 ways to use SEQUND in your music. Number 1, as an idea generator. So I've got SEQUND active in my DAW and I've got it connected to this software synthesizer in this instance. And we're going to just set it running. You can hear I've got a 4 to the floor kick drum. And the first thing I'm going to choose is a key. I'm going to go with F sharp, which matches the pitch of that kick drum. And then we're going to choose a scale from the factory scales. I'm going to go with Phrygian dominant because it's got a particular flavor to it that I like. And the first thing we're going to do is put in some gates, which are the steps which the notes sound on. And we can do that manually by turning on a step here, you see? Or we can use this dice and randomly generate some gates. And what we're listening to at the moment is the same note over and over, but we're listening to the rhythm. So I quite like that one. Put in one more step myself. Okay, so I've got a little rhythm generated that I like, so let's get some pitches in there. Now you could manually put pitches in like this, or again, we can use the dice to come up with pitches for us. If we don't like them, we just roll the dice again and again. Okay, so there's something there that's kind of like an idea, but there's some notes in there I don't like. So the first note I probably want to be a root note. Okay, so that last note, sorry. Play around with it. And I've got an idea that has been generated through a combination of me and the software. Now what we can also do is come up with a secondary lane here and generate, again, randomly pitches, but then we can introduce the probability of it playing either A or B. And you can randomize that. And I probably want the first step to always be the same. But some steps within it, I probably want to be one or the other, depending on the steps, so I get some variation. And I've got a riff going. Now we can play around with our synth. Do a bit of filtering or whatever we want to do. And we've got an idea that we generated that was a combination of the software generating gates and pitches and another lane of pitches and probability, and us thinking, I kind of like that, but I want to edit one parameter of it or change that note, keep that note. I like what you've done there, but I want to add something slightly different there. And you can very quickly generate ideas just using those dice and using your ears and working with the software. So 5 ways to use SEQUND in your music. Number 2, as a riff animator. So we've got a sequence running in SEQUND that is coming out via MIDI into this synthesizer. And it's fine, but it's pretty boring. So what can we do about that? Well, what we can do is we can come down to these little MIDI CC controls here, click on them, and they appear. Now you can see I've actually already mapped them. Now if you don't know what a CC is, that's a continuous controller. It's just a data stream that runs via MIDI to a synthesizer or a sampler or whatever you're using. You can use them within your DAW as well, of course. And it's just a value that you can set on a per step basis or over time. So in this case, this particular synthesizer, CC42, which I've set up here, is the filter cutoff. CC43 is the filter resonance, and CC17 is the cross modulation between VCO1 and VCO2. So if we run our sequence and I start changing those values, we'll hear some differences happening and we'll start animating our riff. So you can hear the changes in the filter cutoff. Let's add some resonance. Already sounding much more interesting than it originally did. We can of course randomize these, and we can set the randomized ranges if we don't want it to be too extreme. And there we go, we've got some CC17, which is some cross modulation. Might be a bit extreme. Straight away, that is far, far more interesting than what we had originally. So after fiddling around for a little while, I found some settings that I like, and I've done two variations of the riff, pattern 1, pattern 2. It's very easy just to copy over and paste a pattern from one to the other and then make some little adjustments to it. And then I'm using this control here, C0 to B0. What that means is a MIDI note C0 upwards will switch between these patterns on the fly. And so I've got a MIDI track that's doing that. So let's hear the result. See it switching patterns. And the great thing is, of course, you can still interact with the instrument itself whilst it's being sequenced. So you can hear that we started with just this really basic 1-bar sequence, and then we brought in the CC modulation and animated it and made it far, far more interesting. It was very easy to do. We could randomize it, or we could do it with very specific values if we wanted, and away we go. So 5 ways to use SEQUND in your music. Number 3, as a polymetric groover. So if music is polymetric, it is simultaneously in more than 1 meter or time signature. So I've got SEQUND set up and I've got a soft synth, and we're going to start it running. And I've got a really simple pattern. You need to start simple with this, otherwise it gets too complicated too quickly. So we've got a 8-step sequence, which is 2/4 or 8/16. And that's just running round and round and round, which is fine, but it's not particularly interesting. Now below I've got these CCs that are modulating parameters. So CC15 is the filter. So let's randomize that. And you can see the filter cutoff jumping about there. But let's change the length of this pattern to, say, 5 steps. Play around with the randomization a bit more. So now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, running against a pattern that's going 1, 2, 1, 2, yeah? So we've got a polymetric filter modulation going on. Let's bring in some resonance and set that down to, say, 7 steps. Actually, why don't we go down to 3? Have a high, a low, and a medium. So now we've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2. So the pattern is in 2, 4, the modulation is in 5, 16, and 3, 16. Let's bring in some pulse width modulation and set that to 7 steps. Start randomizing. And we've got all this motion going on in our very simple sequence because the pattern is rolling like this and then the modulation is running at different shorter lengths within it. So that makes it far, far more interesting to listen to. So there you go, a polymetric groover. 5 ways to use SEQUND in your music. Number 4, as a rhythm generator. So I've got SEQUND connected to a MIDI channel. It's sending out MIDI to a drum synthesizer. Now, it doesn't matter what you use. The only thing you need to be able to do is assign sounds or samples to specific MIDI notes. So I've got 8 notes, and I've assigned them to MIDI notes C1, C#1, D1, etc. So how do I set up SEQUND so it only triggers those notes? Very easily. If we come over to the pitches here, you can see that you can set the values, a low value and a high value. So those 8 notes are C1 to G1. So I've set those values. So now when I randomize it, it's only going to give me those notes and it's not going to fire off notes that don't have any sounds associated with them. So let's start it running and let's put in some gates. We've just got one sound firing over and over. So let's randomize the pitches. Straight away, we get different sounds. So you can hear my 8 different sounds. I've got a bit of swing going on as well, by the way. So let's randomize the chance of things firing and play around with the pitches so we get different sounds. straight away we've got something pretty cool. And we can just keep randomizing it until we get something we like, which I did a moment ago with pattern 1. And of course this is great because it goes along with your kick and snare and your hats, so you've got some just more rhythmic interest, and it was very easy to generate. Five ways to use SEQUND in your music. Number 5, as a composer arranger. So using the techniques I've showed in the other clips, I've come up with 3 patterns, and the first 2 patterns I've come up with a couple of variations of them through randomization, which is very easy to do. And now I'm going to play them out to this synthesizer. But whilst it's doing that, we can use a controller keyboard to switch through the patterns, which is shown in the bottom corner there. So let's set it running. And we've got pattern 1 going round and round, and we can play with it, which is fun, obviously, which is great. But we want to come up with a song now. We want to arrange a song, so we can just use key switches on this keyboard to switch through the patterns. So we could go pattern 1, pattern 1, pattern 2, pattern 1, pattern 1, pattern 1, pattern 2, pattern 3, pattern 4, pattern 4, pattern 5, pattern 4, pattern 4, pattern 5, pattern 6, back to pattern 1, pattern 1, pattern 2, pattern 1. We can make up a song like this, you know. Pattern 2, pattern 1, pattern 3. What about pattern 7? And we can interact with it whilst we're composing the song. So the whole point of this is that if you've got ideas and patterns but you want to extend them out into something that resembles a piece of music, then it's very, very easy to do and very fun to do because I'm just interacting with it live as it runs. And if you like something, of course, you can record what you did because you're just doing key switching data. It's just MIDI notes, so you can record that. So it's very easy to not only come up with patterns using SEQUND, but to use it as an arranger as well. So there we go, 5 ways to use SEQUND in your music. I hope you found that helpful. Thank you very much for watching.